Okay, we are now live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our August live video roundtable. We have our economic development panel with us today, which you're going to have a chance to meet all of them very shortly. But for now, I want to introduce myself. My name is Melissa, and I am a coach for solopreneurs. And I help them go from unfocused and scattered to feeling decisive and being that strategic CEO that they know they're meant to be. And I'm joined today by one of my partners in crime, Shannon Richardson. And she is a financial advisor. She's going to tell you a little bit more about herself. Before I pass the mic on, I wanted to just tell a quick story of how we got here. Back in March, when Northern Colorado shut down basically into quarantine because of the pandemic, Shannon and our other partner, Alison, and I really wanted to create something to help support our local Northern Colorado businesses. And so we hosted a virtual summit. It was a 5-day summit back in April. We put it together in 3 weeks, and we had amazing support and response from all the business leaders in our community. And so we have just carried that forward month by month, doing these live video roundtables to help support the local business community. And one of our most popular sessions was with this group that we're here with today, the Economic Development Panel. They have their fingers on the pulse of not only what's happening in the business community, but what's also happening with local municipalities and governments, and all of the resources available to help our small business community survive during this tough season for all of us. So we're going to hear from them. But first, I want to make sure that you know that we do have Q&A and chat available today. And as our attendees, this session is for you, to support you. And so whatever questions you have, whatever concerns you have, please put them in the chat and the Q&A, and we will make sure that they are posed to the panel. And we have lots of updates to give, but if you have any questions, comments, please come forward with those. And putting messages into the Q&A and chat, you can be anonymous. You won't be brought on camera, so you don't have to have your makeup and hair done. And so you can just type in there your questions. And so we'd love to hear from you. Let's see, what else do I have? I think that's about it. I'm going to introduce Shannon, and we're going to kick this thing off. Shannon.
Thank you, Melissa. Welcome everyone to our August session of Thrive NoCo 2020. Like Melissa said, it was created as a virtual network so that we could support our fellow local business owners, and just by bringing some impactful, no-cost resources to our community. So like Melissa said, my name is Shannon Richardson, and I am a business advisor and partner with the K&R Group with Merrill Lynch and Fort Collins. We are a fiduciary financial planning team, and my partner and I have over 35 years of experience in the financial industry. And really what we want to do in our practice is just understanding that the impact that business owners have on our local economy and in our community. We're really committed to supporting their unique needs. So we assist business owners by providing them direct, transparent financial advice that will hopefully allow them to make informed financial decisions that will provide confidence and a sense of peace of mind. And we do that planning on both sides of the balance sheet. So not only helping with management of assets, investment strategies, retirement planning, but we also look at the liability side, what credit and cash flow analysis, what's the best way to structure a credit need and expansion and acquisition. So really our planning is designed to save business owners time and really just help them drive progress and growth. So with that, I now have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for today for the Economic Development Panel. Many of you already know our moderator, Kat Rico. She is the program director for the Loveland Business Development Center. Kat is a Colorado native, raised right here in Northern Colorado, and she comes from a family history of community impact. So it's really no surprise that Kat does so much to support our local business community. Kat graduated with a bachelor's in business administration from Regis University, and she brings a wealth of experience to the LBDC. She's got a strong operation and marketing track record. She's worked in leadership positions in a variety of organizations, and she also brings her own personal experience as a business owner for 8 years. And Kat is a self-described geek. She loves all things sci-fi, gaming, tech. I know she even builds computers. I just can't even wrap my brain around that. She's quite the Renaissance woman. So with that, I am going to pass it over to our friend and colleague, Kat Rico, for our moderator today for the Economic Development Panel. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks so much for that intro, Shannon. I am thrilled to be here again. It's great to be able to bring all these resources together and just another way to communicate with our business communities. I don't want to spend too much time on myself. We've done this a couple of times. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to kick it over to each of our panelists today. We've got some representation from the region that we wanted to bring in to kind of address some basic questions. I want to remind everyone that's tuned in, that's zoomed in, whatever, make sure you're dropping some questions into the chat. I do have a few prepared questions that we're going to toss to our panelists, but the more engagement we can get from our audience, the better, just because then we can really address what your concerns are and speak directly to those as opposed to just what we're doing in general. So first off, I'd like to have Shannon Hein. She's with the City of Fort Collins, and she's a senior business specialist. Give just a quick introduction about herself.
Hi there, thanks for having me. I'm Shannon. I'm in the Economic Health Department for the City of Fort Collins, which is what we call our Economic Development Office. Our Economic Health Manager recently transitioned to the Recovery Manager for the City of Fort Collins, which is a new position. So I'm an interim in that role now on the business support side, but really trying to understand how we can best. We've been focused, our smaller team has been focused on small business support. And now we're just in full response and recovery mode and trying to create resources for our business community. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Next up, we've got Scott Schorling. He is with the City of Loveland. He's one of the business development project managers with the City of Loveland. Scott, can you do a quick intro for us?
Thanks, Kat. Thanks for having me. Fairly new to the public sector. Been working for various cities for just about a year, but primary history and experiences in real estate development, commercial redevelopment. And so my focus in joining the City of Loveland is really to try to bridge the gap between private investment and the public sector. And I think it's helpful to come from the private side to use that lens in order to try to help business and city pick up efficiencies. And I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Scott. Next up, we've got Bryan Pederson with the City of Greeley. He's the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Greeley.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, Bryan Pederson, City of Greeley Economic Development Coordinator. We've been working a lot kind of through this COVID kind of health emergency here in town, just with both of our big kind of businesses in town, making sure they have what they need, and our smaller businesses, and really kind of working with our chamber and our DDA, and just like the other panelists on the call today, to really kind of listen to you as business owners and figure out what gaps and what's missing and what we can do to help. So it's great to be here.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again, and want to make sure that I didn't miss any of our panelists or anything. But let's see here. Let me just double check one thing. Okay.
Kat, this is Stacy from Windsor. Do you want me to?
Yes, I am so sorry. Stacy is with the town of Windsor. She's the Economic Development Director. I knew I was like, there's someone missing on my list.
No problem, no problem. So hello, everybody. I'm Stacy Miller. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the town of Windsor. I've been doing economic development for about 21 years, up and down the Front Range, as far north as all of Larimer County to Lakewood. Windsor is uniquely positioned, obviously, right between Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley. And we're probably one of the fastest growing communities. We have a lot of residential growth going on right now, and commercial growth. We've seen a lot of growth in both sectors. It's been very interesting. So I work on business attraction. My colleague in my department works on business retention. And like Shannon mentioned, and so many other people have mentioned, we're on a lot of recovery and response recovery meetings per week. I think when I added it up, I'm on 9 different meetings per week, usually about some sort of response and recovery for going on. But we're just trying to save our businesses and get them here to grow. You know, it's interesting, but glad and thankful to be on the panel, and hopefully we can have some insight into what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny because about half of our panelists and myself came from another meeting directly. So talking about that whole idea that we're collaborating a lot regionally, you know, we're all together in this boat trying to steer in the same direction so that we're all putting our energy and our knowledge towards that regional recovery, which is why we've got resources from Larimer County and Weld County both on this panel today. So speaking of that, you know, the entire time we've been doing these panels, we've been talking a bit about, you know, how our region is working together to drive those recovery efforts. And we've kind of outlined some of those pieces in previous conversations. But I'd really like to open it up to our panelists and have you all just kind of share how the region is continuing to work together towards these recovery efforts, because we've kind of shifted, I think, from addressing the immediate concerns to looking a little bit more long-term. So what do you all see as some really cool things that are kind of happening right now regionally for that cooperation? Let's start it off with Stacy. I see Stacy right now, so we'll start off with Stacy.
I was like, well, I'm sure everybody has the same amount, you know, of stuff going on. So kind of the 2 main programs I will say, which, you know, I give a lot of kudos to the larger municipalities for leading the charge, but there's also a campaign called Reignite Northern Colorado. And so a lot of us are on that and just trying different ways, both in the, you know, trying to rescue companies and figure out what that looks like, both from the strategic planning side of things, as well as applying for grants and trying to work through some of the programs there to help companies. I think what's kind of cool, honestly, about a lot of our different communities, because I got information from other communities, I've shared it with other communities, is about the CARES Act funding. So we all kind of got this allocation of money that we're trying to figure out how to spend, because if the municipalities don't spend it, then it goes back to the state, you know, the counties, then the state. And so we don't want to give any of that money up. So I think right now we're all trying to work, and we don't care whether they have the same program in Windsor as in Fort Collins or Loveland or Greeley. We just want the money to be spent to help our companies. So we're trying to share all that information, and I got a lot of information from Arvada. I'll give them a shout out because they were great at providing me with a lot of documentation on how to do it. You know, what are programs that you got passed, because there's so many guidelines, and then there's also so many guidelines that haven't even been identified yet. So we're trying to tread lightly, but we want to spend that money and make sure that it goes to our business communities. So we've all been advocates on sharing that. I would say that's, to me, the biggest thing that we've done.
Yeah, I think it's been great that, you know, with this CARES money, and then just backing up before that was allocated to each individual city. I mean, we've had kind of mini laboratories in how to adapt to the pandemic and get information out to our business community, but then share those best practices with all of the individual cities in our region. So, you know, coming into this role, it's been super helpful to have, you know, our regional associations like the Ready Group to be able to share best practices, to share information, to navigate this, you know, uncharted territory. It's been nice to be part of.
And
Bryan, I'd love to hear Weld County's perspective on this too.
Yeah, I was going to say to echo Scott's sentiment and Stacy's, kind of having some of these regional groups like NoCo Ready, our Regional Economic Development Initiative. It has been great just pulling together a regional survey data and just kind of not being siloed to our own individual communities, and kind of expanding to different industries, because we all kind of service a different niche. That's been lovely. And then like everybody said, just having our communities come together to funnel these extra care dollars through kind of our county channels. It's been nice to kind of have that and not be in it alone, you know, so.
And I would add, I think the benefit to all this is that our communities were working together before COVID hit. And so it made it a lot easier for us to come together in a response manner and strategic way to get some things up off the ground quickly. So I would say NoCoRecovers.com is one of those resources that happened fairly quickly because we did all have the relationships built already, and we could come together and build some resources that were applicable to the entire region versus based on each community. And then I'll also plug the Keep NoCo Open campaign if that's appropriate to do so now. That was another, I think, outcome of these groups coming together in that campaign, primarily before Larimer County was in jeopardy of losing the variance. A lot of the communication teams from the municipalities came together to understand what messaging we could put out there to really get our citizens and community members to wear face coverings and be safe, and so that our businesses can stay open.
Yes, I love that Keep NoCo Open campaign. The idea of getting all of our organizations kind of on the same communication channel kind of speaks to that cooperation that we've seen regionally kind of develop that maybe, you know, regular citizens, business owners don't necessarily know is happening in the background. So I do see one question has come through for our panelists. I'm gonna circle back to that one question. I do want to encourage everyone that's participating or watching to drop your questions into the chat. But one of the things I want to address before we get into some of the chat questions is that money is always a concern, right? That's something that's been a huge driver in everything that's been happening. We've already kind of talked a little bit about how that CARES Act funding is starting to kind of roll out to the municipalities, and we're going to be using some of that money. What are some of the other funding opportunities that are out there outside of just that CARES Act funding? Because a lot of that I think is being designated towards actual programming, but what about directly for business assistance? What do you guys have that you can maybe share that's kind of coming down the pipeline? Shannon, do you want to kick us off with that?
Sure, yeah, and actually ours, I would say, is really tied to those CARES Act dollars. I think, you know, this is such unfortunate events, but also thankful that we have some resources allocated to do some things that we couldn't do maybe even in March. So we launched some loan fund programs, but those were loans. And so I think now that the CARES Act dollars are coming through, we're able to provide some financial assistance. I can't say grants, but they're grants. Some of those tools for businesses that they don't have to pay back, especially for businesses that may have missed out on the PPP dollars or didn't have a strong banking relationship and they weren't able to obtain those. And so I would say we're getting ready to roll those programs out here in September, hoping that those will be available quickly.
Now, are those going to be directly through the city of Fort Collins? Are they going to be available for all of Larimer County? How do people get access to that financial assistance? Those will be for Fort Collins businesses, and I'm thinking everybody on this call will be launching their own programs through those CARES Act dollars. They all might have different criteria or different points of emphasis, and so ours will be small business grants up to $7,500 is what we're targeting right now. And so developing that criteria and eligibility as we speak to hopefully launch in the next couple of weeks. But as everybody on the call will tell you, it's kind of a mad dash because, like you said, Kat, those funds have to be spent by the end of the year. And so everybody right now is just trying to build their programs as quickly as possible and get them out the door so that we don't have to give that money back. Absolutely. Scott, what's coming out of Loveland in terms of some of that additional financial assistance? Do you know of anything right now?
Yeah, we're going to be going to City Council for an overall approval here, I believe September 1st, but we're already trying to gear up some of the programs so that we can hit those timelines and requirements. And so we're adapting something that our DDA, which is our Downtown Development Authority, rolled out prior to this CARES Act allocation. And it's essentially a commercial rent assistance to businesses that operate in the city of Loveland. And so based on what their monthly rent is, or if it's an owner-occupied property, we'll issue checks directly to their lender or their landlord depending on what their monthly rent is, and maybe a multiplier on that. And the thought behind it is that we want to keep businesses operating in place, because they're impacted and their revenues are impacted. They're having a lot of difficulty coming up with some of those rental payments. So we're going to provide some assistance there. And then, it also could offset some of the additional costs that have been incurred by businesses during this time. So whether that's reinvesting that money into protective equipment or pivoting their product offerings or doing more marketing online, we think it's a good way to support real estate values, but give some businesses some flexibility there.
Awesome. Bryan, what about out of Weld County?
Sure. Well, I can definitely tell you about Greeley. I know the Weld County is launching their recovery fund, and that's the section of the CARES dollars that's at the community level. And perhaps later we'll talk about the Energize Colorado Gap Fund, and that's also CARES Act money, but they're different buckets. So that kind of confused me for a bit. So I want to make that clear. But the Weld County Fund, so Greeley is funneling its money through Weld County, and for small businesses, we kind of have a tiered approach based on employment counts. So from 1 to 10 employees, we have grants for $10,000. I think 11 to 25, it's $15,000. 26 to 50 is $20,000, and above 50, it's $25,000. So that's sort of what we're doing on that level to kind of work with our businesses based on kind of their size. So we'll be, like I said, administering that through upstate economic development at the Weld County level.
Great. Stacy, in terms of Windsor, is there anything special that Windsor businesses need to know about for grant opportunities or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'll say we're part of the Weld Loan Fund as well, like Bryan mentioned. So we put money into that fund, which will then open up about $3 million worth of, or sorry, not loan fund, but the assistance program. And the reason why we're calling it assistance instead of grants is so that we don't open up businesses to the single tax audit laws, so that they don't get a grant and then they get audited and have to pay taxes on it and all that other stuff. So that's why we're calling it an assistance program. But Shannon is right, it is really a grant program. That's the one out of Weld County. Larimer County still has the loan program. We have done a mini marketing program in Windsor. We have closed that down. We will reopen that up and reinfuse that with CARES Act dollars. So we're going to give everybody who already applied to that, hopefully another $500, and then open it up for $1,000 grants for marketing to help market your company on that. We've also done and allocated several different pots of money to the Chamber of Commerce for PPE reimbursement or new assistance with that, as well as creating a whole new visitor platform to try to bring new visitors into Windsor to fulfill our restaurants from capacity and retail revenue. The other thing our DDA is doing also is going for a matching CDOT grant to help infuse our local businesses downtown with different equipment or different heaters or outdoor seating or different things that they might need. We loaned out all of our picnic tables from our parks, the majority of them, to go to outdoor seating in our restaurants in town. So that's kind of replacing that and hoping that grant can kind of substitute so we can maintain the outdoor seating for our restaurants, and hopefully through the winter. We'll have to see how that goes. I don't know if it'll get extended. I think it expires November 1st or something. So we'll see if we can get that extended, and that we're doing in the form of advocacy with letters to the governor's office and stuff about trying to promote for our businesses. So other than that, those are all the programs. We're kind of, we're in the middle. We're 2/3 Weld and 1/3 Larimer. So we play on both sides. We're kind of like Switzerland. So we get to play in both buckets, which is nice.
Yep. That's why I was like, okay, I'm going to save you for last, because I have a feeling they're going to hit pieces of both of stuff that's going to apply for you. So really the moral of the story for our business owners is that each municipality and each county does have programs that are starting to roll out. Make sure that you're connected with your economic development drivers, the people that are on this panel, as well as your local chambers of commerce, because they're going to be able to help you dial into some of these programs, including that Reignite Colorado information as well. That is another gap fund that is being put out through OEDIT, I believe. Shannon, do you have a little bit more information about that for us?
I know everybody's kind of waiting in the wing on when they're going to release those applications. It's quite a big fund, and statewide again, but we're just patiently waiting for the application to be released. It keeps getting moved, and so I think federal funds are the name of the game right now. So just trying to manage that and see when it gets out the door, but hopefully soon. And then it would be great if then everybody kind of would be launching their programs around the same time to get those resources out the door.
Yeah, there is a lot that's coming down the pipeline. I know that it's maybe seemed from a business owner perspective in the last month or two that everything's kind of slowed down, but that's just because we're at the point as economic development professionals where we've kind of hit pause a little bit so that we can refocus and make sure that our energies are going to be directed in the right way to help our businesses long term. The other thing that I would really encourage all of our business owners to do is, if you're not sure, if you're in a dire cash position right now, meet with your local SBDC. East Colorado SBDC out of Greeley, Larimer SBDC out of Fort Collins, and then the Loveland Business Development Center, of course, out of Loveland. We have a whole slate of consultants that are really well versed in not only these different programs that are starting to roll out and that have already been rolled out, like the PPP programs, EIDL, everything like that, but they also are well trained to be able to help you look at your financial position for your business long term and figure out where you can make adjustments so that you have the best chance of getting through everything here. The consulting, it's free, it's confidential. Why wouldn't you use it? Is kind of my personal opinion. And I'm sure that would be echoed by most of our panelists as well. So let's kind of address that first question that we've gotten from the chat. I think this is a really interesting question. So what are we seeing in Northern Colorado in terms of economic health and the health of small businesses? So what are, let's look at both sides of that. Let's look at what are the challenges that our businesses are going to be facing long-term, and what are some of the opportunities that you're starting to see that are popping up for our businesses? Does anyone out of our panelists have something that automatically comes to mind out of that? I'm watching all four again.
I'll address it just from a building permit perspective. We just got an update from our building department, and single family home sales have continued to carry the water in the real estate market. And so there's a lot of permits that are being pulled for single family and multifamily construction. Interest rates are very low, and that's helping that entire marketplace. Switching to the commercial side, it's a completely different story. We've got, last year we did 20 new commercial property building permits. This year we're down at 1. It's a totally different landscape, and I think it's primarily because of the retail impacts and how that's changed. And a lot of the capital markets have just kind of put things on pause until they've figured out, what the future holds. And I'm talking specifically about retail and point of sale commerce, because there are other sectors of the real estate market that are continuing to do well with distribution, warehousing, some of those property uses that are supporting all the e-commerce that's taking place. So from that perspective, we're still seeing houses being built. People are refinancing and have some liquidity. There's additional liquidity in the market, so they're able to shop. So our sales tax collections have actually not been impacted quite as drastically as what we had originally expected. But what that course may be 6 months, 12 months from now is still unknown.
So I'll echo what Scott said. I think the biggest challenge for small business is the unknown, right? That's the biggest challenge. Is we've never dealt with a pandemic like this before, and we don't know how it's going to continue to ripple through the communities. So that's the challenge for us. I think Shannon pointed it out earlier when she said, we all play together really well before this happened. So I think that's one of the biggest strengths that Northern Colorado has and will continue to have, is that we play well together. There is no ego. We're all here to help our businesses. So I think that's what's kind of the most exciting thing. And I think we all have our own little niches of information that we go out and grab and try to share back with companies. And, you know, I'll use an example of like the tech that is required now. Like I was on a restaurant call and they said, you know, people should really download and buy into this app called OLO, O-L-O. It's a pointless contact system where people can order food from restaurants and then they can pay through that app. So there's no, they don't have to have contact with anybody if they don't want to. So that puts those folks that don't feel comfortable about going into a restaurant right now, or still don't feel comfortable about going in and even paying for a meal, or exchanging money at the window kind of a thing. It just really eliminates that concern. So that was some of that. And I'll have to say, a lot of our restaurants, I give them so many kudos for being, and there are retailers innovative and creative in the different things that they're doing. I will recommend, our DDA did a program where they went in and did virtual tours of these retailers to show what was inside, and posted them on the DDA site. So that was, and it's an Adobe platform that escapes my mind right now, but those kind of things and those innovations I think are continuing to help, and that we're all working together. So those are kind of some interesting things that I've seen, and so proud of all of our Windsor businesses too, and really Northern Colorado for being innovative and creative. And that's why I'm government. I'm here to prop you up and support, because entrepreneurism is not in my blood, unfortunately. I wish it was, but yeah, we're just here to support. So,
yeah. So I got another interesting question here. So, you know, we've got a question here in chat that says, you know, what are your current projections or expectations for the future of the pandemic on the business community? Because one of the things that we've all been kind of echoing as we're looking at recovery and how we move forward is we're telling everyone, just hang in there, hang in there. How long are we going to need to tell our businesses to just hang in there? Because that can get kind of exhausting to hear, I think. Bryan, do you have any comments or any input on that, since we haven't heard from you?
No, it's again, it's kind of like last April. If we only had a crystal ball, right, to figure out what we needed and what we needed to get prepared and what we needed to do. You know, a lot of the small businesses I've been talking to, the ones who have really evolved, have been kind of what Stacy has said with their technology. You know, so we've talked to some businesses who didn't have a big technology presence, and now they've stepped up their online sales, and like you wouldn't believe. So, I mean. As far as preparation is concerned, I mean, I always tell people, you know, prepare for the worst. We don't know. I wouldn't assume that it would be over by, you know, Christmas. I would hope that would be the case, but I would just say, you know, try to get creative and dig in, you know, because we don't know.
Well, and I think that as we look at some of the really major shifts that have happened recently, we've got some pretty significant shifts in consumer spending and how they interact with businesses. And those things are unlikely to just go back, because some of these things are really positive, right? Like the idea of being able to order takeout cocktails from your favorite restaurant and get them home, like that's going to be a pretty big shift that's going to stick around for a while. So I know I like being able to go and get a cocktail and take it home with me. So what other effects do you kind of see on the business community? Shannon, do you want to jump on this one?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we're talking about right now, being a university city, is just the impacts of CSU and the students. And so I know a lot of the restaurants and retail who benefit from CSU students are really concerned about they have on-site classes until, I believe, November 6th, until fall break, and then they're all online. And so, you know, what does that do? Can they capture as much CSU revenue before they all head back to wherever, you know, or go online, and as well as the winter months? And so we have our outdoor patio program as well. So understanding if we can, right now it goes till the end of September, can we extend that potentially until at least the CSU students head back out, so that we can help those businesses capture those dollars. And then I would also add, and this is kind of a larger topic, but just the impacts of Poudre School in Thompson Valley, and the all online schooling for students, and what that does for parents in the workforce, especially I would say, small businesses, and what do they do when their workforce has to be at home teaching. And so I think those are all struggles we're going to see here through this third quarter, probably bleeding into the rest of the year.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into another question, and this one we kind of had pre-discussed a little bit, but the idea of trying to extend those patio programs and things like that. You know, restaurants and retail have been hit particularly hard by these shutdowns, and then the limited reopening opportunities. So as we start to see the summer and patio season come to an end, Shannon, you've already given us a hint at what Fort Collins is looking at in terms of extending that that patio program kind of season. What is Greeley and Loveland and Windsor looking at to kind of help those businesses keep their doors open as much as possible and as wide as possible? Bryan, it looks like you're going to jump in right away.
Yeah, I can. So right now it's set to expire, at least our patio order, on September 12th. So the vote is happening at the city council level, at least in Greeley tonight, to extend that 2 months. So we anticipate the governor is probably going to do the same thing. So that would put us to mid-November when we get to keep the patio liquor ordinances roughly the way we have them now, which would be obviously preferable. So that's what we're planning.
Probably some extra space heaters and stuff too for the businesses, yeah. Right? Because it can get kind of chilly, you know, mid-October. Scott, what about Loveland?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the nature of the pandemic is that the cities are in it also alongside the business community. And one of the positive byproducts of that is that we've had to become creative with relaxing standards and regulations and allowing businesses to go out into the street. And, you know, CDOT is fully on board with helping that on some of our state highways, and it goes all the way up to the governor's office. So that's been one of the really positive byproducts of this is trying to think creatively on how we might adapt some of our standards. And we're trying to do the same thing with retailers, and, you know, with just how some of the deliveries and curbside pickup are happening now. We might have to look at what our parking and zoning and some of those other regulations are to help encourage that type of use. And so we're thinking about that, trying to be forward thinking in those ways.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of shocked me as I've learned more and more about these patio programs is, you know, I know Fort Collins and Loveland both have 287 running through their downtowns. And so the idea that you're going to have to communicate with CDOT on those closures and get the state approval and everything, there's actually a lot more that goes into that than meets the eye to the public, I think. Stacy, what about Windsor?
Yeah, so we also have Highway 392.
That's right.
Running right to the middle of our downtown. So we don't even have, so that's been a big challenge. I'm not gonna lie, because we can't shut it down. And I love what Loveland's done. I think, I don't know if Fort Collins and Greeley have done it too, but, you know, closing down a mid street between there and letting all the restaurants go out into the street. We are doing that, but on the side streets. So like on 5th or 6th, you know, we'll shut it down and let them go out into the parking lot a little bit. We're looking at continuing to allow that, hopefully, but doing it in the form of potentially, I know some of our retailers are looking at putting awnings out to protect from weather and or tent structures, heaters. Again, that partnership with CDOT and that grant program to try to come up with some tables, some permanent tables and stuff that they can have down there. And then we are also putting CARES Act money into buying tables so that we can let that happen for as long as we need to. So we're still trying to help with that. Yeah, it's I think we'll follow the leader a little bit on Fort Collins and Loveland and Greeley, but our DDA is aggressively working with that, and we're lucky that a lot of them already have patios, so our restaurants have been able to kind of expand out. And
yeah, I think that this is going to be interesting because, you know, if we're looking at the long-term effect of some of this stuff, the things that we are establishing, the programs that we're establishing and what we're learning as economic development professionals, I think will translate long-term, so that if for some reason in the spring we're back kind of where we are right now, we already have some of these pieces in place so we can execute these programs a lot more quickly. And I think the general public will know about them more, and hopefully our businesses will be better prepared too, where they will have those tents and tables and things like that in place to be able to do this right away. One of the other things I'd like to talk about real quick is, we've got mask orders, we've got cleaning compliance, and we've got all of these different things that business owners have to keep up on with regards to regulations and enforcing policies that they've never had to before as business owners. So are there any training opportunities or resources that our business owners should be aware of when it comes to, the mask orders, the cleaning, enforcing these policies?
I can start that one or take it. We are using part of our CARES funding to launch a de-escalation training. The first day of the state, Larimer County and the city of Fort Collins, we already had a mask mandate. But then once the statewide order went into play, Fort Collins Police Services received about 100 phone calls from community members who were out and about inside businesses who were calling the police on other patrons. And so I think we just realized like it's hard for businesses right now, and it's hard for those frontline staff who might be not equipped, or maybe they're in high school or college and they're trying to have these interactions with folks that maybe don't want to wear a mask or whatever that is. And so we're doing a panel with some businesses who have maybe some best practices to share. And then we'll be rolling out some videos afterwards, just some short, like micro videos that businesses can watch and then share with their frontline staff to try to get some tools that they can pass out to those folks that are engaged with the community.
I think that also kind of speaks to the NoCo, Keep NoCo Open campaign. One of the key drivers, or one of the key messages behind that Keep NoCo Open campaign was be kind. Whether you're a customer or whether you're a business owner, everyone has to just kind of be kind to each other. But I think that de-escalation training is really, really important and really needed for a lot of our businesses right now. So that's something to definitely be aware of. Bryan, is there anything out of Greeley that maybe we don't know about, or Weld County as a whole, that they're doing for any kind of additional training opportunities for business owners or their employees?
That's a great question. Initially, when this all kind of started, Ames Community College had some training programs for some of our bigger kind of companies. As far as I know about our smaller companies, I'm not sure unless the chamber, the DDA, maybe Stacy's more familiar with something that's going on at the county level. We're following the statewide mask order over here that was extended, 10 days ago with, everyone over 11 is wearing masks. Whether or not you're out in public and saying that that's the case or not is a different story, but that's certainly what we're encouraging. And
okay. Stacy or Scott, anything out of Loveland or Windsor that we should be aware of? I think I've probably got one to add to Loveland, but I'll let you guys go first.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, yeah, I'll plug our Visit Loveland team, which is kind of the tourism and hospitality side of our office. They're out there shooting videos similar to what some of the other cities are doing to try to engage people to shop local and to be a tourist in their own town, to encourage people that would perhaps otherwise be going on a trip to Hawaii or something like that to explore their own town and cities to shop local. And part of that is making them feel secure and safe that when they're going to go into these businesses, that these mask ordinances are upheld. And it's a political football, and there's a lot of sensitivities on both sides of that discussion. And the way that they're determining the metric for keeping businesses open primarily has to do with the case count. And so it's one of the unfortunate byproducts of using that metric as the main metric is that we really need to try to keep that transmission rate low and the cases down. And with all the advanced testing and the extra testing that we're doing, it's a challenging process. But trying to educate people of what really is making the determination of whether or not their business stays open is an important part of that.
Yep. Stacy?
So I will add that as far as like training goes or implementation, there's a part of the Reignite plan that's a third of it is based off of workforce and kind of like retooling, reskilling. So that component is really investigating in to try to figure out, you know, what is the new norm and how do we operate our businesses and what do you do if you've lost your job during this and how do you reskill up for something else? So there is a component with that and that we're working on from that standpoint. Windsor specifically doesn't have any training or educational components. We really refer people to the state and the guidelines and the CDPHE if they're really focused on specific industries like you know, the hair, nail salon, those kind of things, those industries, they have their guidelines set up for best practices. So we kind of refer people to those so that they are in compliance. Windsor is, again, in both communities, so it makes it interesting when we have one that says you don't have to follow the rules but yet you have to follow the rules because if you don't, the state controls the liquor license. So we can't not follow the rules. So we just have recommended, it became difficult for us when everything first came out and saying, what do you recommend? You know, you're in Larimer and you're in Weld. So we just said, we're going to follow the state. So we follow the state guidelines for all of that and work through those programs and how to operate and how to train your employees on how to do the new cleaning, the new norm, all of those kind of things.
Yeah, I would say I want to add to, you know, this whole training pool of things that are going on between myself at the Loveland Business Development Center and then Larimer SBDC. We do have some specific programs that are starting to roll out. We're getting back to some of our normal programming in terms of business education, but we've added a couple of pieces too. I know I'm going to be hosting a webinar from one of our speakers that's going to be talking about stress management during the pandemic, especially geared at entrepreneurs, because you are all of a sudden trying to run your business, which is hard enough, and maybe you've got kids that you have to educate from home now, and maybe your business has taken a huge hit. And so how do you manage the stress of all that, along with complying with all of these different, sometimes competing orders, depending on which side of a county line you land on. Johnstown is the same way, right? Where part of it's Larimer, part of it's Weld. We have a few communities that are like that. So it can be really stressful to try and manage all of that. Fort Collins out of Larimer SBDC, they're also bringing back their Leading Edge program, which is a deep dive business planning program. So that should be pretty interesting, and hopefully it will help some of our businesses that have had to pivot kind of dig deeper than they have in the past into their business and really have a good solid plan going forward. It's much more of an intensive course. A lot of our courses are usually kind of one-offs. This one is a several week course and several, you know, probably I think about 12 to 14 hours of education, not to mention the work that you're putting in outside of the program. So those are some really good comprehensive programs that I think are kind of rolling out that are going to help our business owners kind of weather this long term. I do have an interesting question that came through here in chat that I really like, because I learned the answer to this a few weeks ago, but I know no one that I know personally knows the answer. So what are the metrics that lawmakers are watching to determine how open and closed we are? So Shannon, do you want to kick us off with this? So I'm pretty sure you know this.
No, I was just going to pull up the Larimer County dashboard, which is a great resource for those in Larimer County.
Can you link that in the chat when you get a second? Oh, yeah. That way we can get that out.
So I think the big piece for us is, did I?
Shannon's got it out. Awesome.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So yeah, I think one of the big pieces for us that's a topic of conversation is turnaround and testing. And so I don't know if this is really answering the question, but it's top of mind. And one of the reasons why I think we're seeing these schools go virtual is because there's just so much lag time in the testing where it's hard to stop the spread in an efficient time to really make an impact. And so I think it's a lot of, I think that's something that people just have a hard time understanding or making that connection as to why some of the decisions are being made, and the lack of testing is a big piece of that.
Yeah, and so I know in Larimer County, we've got that dashboard, and I believe there's like 6 key metrics that the state is really looking at. Bryan, is there anything similar to that dashboard that's out of Weld County? I'm not as familiar with their resources and their processes there.
You know, that's a good question. I have a state and a national one, but and I'm sure I could drill it down at the county level. I'll have to get that out to the group. Maybe we can email that out perhaps later.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, and
Fantastic.
I would just add on the Larimer County dashboard, out of those 6 metrics, if even one reaches a threshold, that's when that variance is in jeopardy. And so a few weeks ago, when Larimer County was on the brink of losing it, it was it could be because of one metric, and so it is hard because you see all these pieces, but even if we go over on one of them, whether it's hospitalization or case count, it can really throw us backwards.
Yeah, and for some of the background on that I thought was kind of fascinating is that when one of those metrics is triggered into that red zone of, hey, this is concerning, then the state looks at all of our variances as a county and says, okay, you guys have to come up with a mitigation plan and you have to submit it to the state, and the state has to approve it, or they deny it and they start rolling us back. So that's kind of how it ends up rolling backwards. It looks like Melissa just linked the dashboard for Weld County as well. So if anyone is wondering, what are these determining factors, it's not really as murky as it seems, because this is public information. Maybe, all the plans and everything for mitigation aren't public information, but in terms of those metrics, for case counts, number of ICU cases, new reported cases, those things are all public information. And the reason that in large part we launched some of the Keep NoCo Open campaign near the end of July is because mid-July is when we saw a case spike. Well, that was just 2 weeks after the 4th of July, and people had all these wonderful, happy private parties, but then we saw case spikes. So that's why we still encourage people to wear masks, even if you're at private parties and private gatherings, because it does make a difference. And when we see these numbers move, each of our respective counties and then all of the towns and businesses inside of those are affected by just those straight case counts. So that's really important to see. So we're getting really close here. I just want to kick it over just for a minute or so to each of our panelists. Is there anything that you want to make sure, or anyone that you know that our business owners need to connect with? Let's start with Bryan over in Greeley, and then we'll just kind of move around. And then we'll kick it back over to our hosts.
I think I'll echo what was said earlier about the East Colorado SBDC just being a great resource, and ourself in my office here in Greeley too. We can certainly help if you're on this call, and any of the panelists I'm sure can help you navigate some of the things that are coming in the various funding buckets. So please reach out to us and let us know how we can help and what your specific needs are, and we can get you connected.
Great. Stacy, you're up next. Anything else?
The one thing I do want to mention is something Shannon mentioned, the NoCo Recovers website. What I do want to mention on that is that there's also something called NoCo Safety Supply. So if businesses, so if you go to nocorecovers.com, there's a NoCo Safety Supply on there. And I tell it twofold. If you need supplies and you want to buy them locally, please check that out. If you have supplies for people and you need to sell them, you can put your business on there. So it really kind of supports people who are looking for it and people who are making it or manufacturing it. So it kind of covers not just the retail sector, but our manufacturers and other entities that are affected. Whether you have 1 employee or 50 employees, it doesn't matter. You can fill out those forms and at least get your information out there in another platform to be able to have access to. So I would recommend that.
Another great tool that developed out of this wonderful regional economic partnership. Shannon, any last thoughts out of Fort Collins?
Yeah, I just put in the chat, Larimer County Health Department in partnership with Larimer County Economic Development, they do a weekly Q&A. You can ask questions of the health department that impact your business. So that's every Thursday at 2 o'clock, the same Zoom link every week. So they were doing themed days, but I think it's opened up to just whatever your questions are now. So that's a great chance if you have specific questions there. And then I would just plug a website that Fort Collins launched additionally is forfortcollins.com, and that's kind of our support local website. So tools and resources for both community members and businesses, social media, graphic creators, some really great business stories on there as well, and pictures. So just a great resource if you're looking to see how you can support Fort Collins businesses or how your customers can help support you.
Yeah, thank you for that update. And then last but not least, Scott, anything else out of Loveland that we need to make sure that people know about real quick?
I just want to say thank you to all the businesses, and the last 6 months have been terribly trying and difficult on so many different levels. And we've really seen some of the best attributes of what makes NoCo strong. And I would just encourage everyone to engage, at every level of government that you can. I mean, lots of things have changed, and if it's been a while since you've reached out to your economic development office, please do that, because programs are constantly changing, and we're here to help support you. So keep going, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. So thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you not only for being here today, but for your work on all of these wonderful regional efforts. I know all of us have had our fair share of trying to figure out exactly what direction that we go. And, really one of the most wonderful things that's grown out of this is just that sense of community. Even if we're not in the same room, we're in the same Zoom room. So that's very, very helpful, I think, for all of us. I want to go ahead and bring on Alison Proffit. She is with Thrive and Wevo to kind of close us out for the day.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Kat, and to all of our panelists and my fellow co-hosts. My name's Alison Proffit. I had a prior engagement, so I wasn't here for the welcome, but I caught enough of the information from our economic development teams and know that you guys are doing wonderful work out there, and our government really does want to support the small business owners out there. So we are, for the Thrive NoCo team, we are going to be doing another video series at the end of September on the 22nd from 12 to 1, and does partner very nicely with the session that Kat Rico mentioned on the topic of stress management. So we're looking forward to talking about how to navigate the unknown and manage the stress of it, which I think some of us feel like we've earned the gold medal in that at this point, but there's always work we can do. And so we're really excited and looking forward to that. So we'll be putting information out there on all the different channels that Melissa mentioned in the chat. We're really grateful that all of you were able to join us here today. If you need anything, please reach out to these fabulous resources that are on this screen right here, including myself, Melissa, or Shannon. And that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.